Every single day, millions of people around the world walk through the doors of McDonald's. For some, it is a quick meal after work. For others, it is a childhood memory, a familiar logo, a familiar taste, a brand that feels almost impossible to escape. But behind the famous golden arches is a story filled with ambition, innovation, competition, and controversy. A story about how a small restaurant became one of the most powerful companies on earth. A story about two brothers who created a revolution, and the businessmen who transformed their dream into a global empire. This is the untold story of McDonald's. Before McDonald's became a symbol recognized in almost every country, it was just a small restaurant in California. In 1940, a business model that could expand far beyond one location. And that is when a man named Ray Kroc entered the story. In the early 1950s, Ray Kroc was a struggling salesman selling milkshake machines. He had spent years trying to find success, but his career had never reached the level he wanted. Then one day, he received an unusual order. A small restaurant in California had purchased multiple machines from him. Most restaurants only needed one. This restaurant needed several. Curious, Kroc decided to visit the location himself. What he saw changed his life forever. He saw a restaurant operating with incredible efficiency. No wasted movement. No unnecessary complexity. Just a simple system producing thousands of meals quickly. Kroc immediately understood the potential. He believed this idea could spread across America. But there was one problem. The McDonald brothers were not interested in building a massive empire. They were happy with their successful restaurant. Ray Kroc saw something different. He saw a global opportunity, and he was determined to make it happen. The story of McDonald's was about to become much bigger, but it would also become much more complicated. Ray Kroc believed he had found something extraordinary. Not just a restaurant, not just a successful business, a machine, a system that could be repeated thousands of times. A formula where every customer, no matter where they were, would receive the same experience, the same burger, the same fries, the same taste, the same speed. To Kroc, this was the future of American business. But convincing the McDonald brothers was not easy. Richard and Maurice McDonald were cautious. They had already built a successful restaurant, but they were not interested in the stress and uncertainty that came with rapid expansion. They wanted control. They wanted stability. They had seen other businesses grow too quickly and collapse. But Ray Kroc saw an opportunity that was too big to ignore. Eventually, he convinced the brothers to allow him to open new McDonald's locations through a franchise system. In 1955, he opened the first McDonald's franchise in Des Plaines, Illinois. This was the beginning of a transformation. Kroc's approach was simple. Find entrepreneurs, give them the McDonald's system. Make sure every restaurant followed strict rules. The goal was consistency. A customer walking into a McDonald's in Chicago should have the same experience as someone visiting one in California. And that consistency became one of the company's greatest strengths. But building a franchise empire required more than just selling burgers. Kroc understood something important. McDonald's was not only selling food, it was selling a feeling, a reliable experience, a place families could recognize, a brand people could trust. The Golden Arches became more than a logo. They became a symbol of modern America. But behind the success was growing tension. The relationship between Ray Kroc and the original founders began to change. The brothers and Kroc had very different visions for the future. The McDonald brothers wanted careful growth. Kroc wanted expansion at any cost. And as the company grew, the balance of power started shifting. The biggest conflict came from ownership. Ray Kroc wanted more control over the company. He believed that McDonald's had the potential to become one of the largest businesses in the world, But the original agreement limited his ability to make major changes. So Kroc searched for another way to grow his influence, and he found it through real estate. In 1956, Kroc created a company called Franchise Realty Corporation. The idea was simple, but extremely powerful. Instead of only making money from franchise fees, McDonald's could control the land where restaurants were built. Franchise owners would pay rent, and McDonald's would create a steady stream of income. This strategy would later become one of the secrets behind the company's incredible financial success. McDonald's was no longer just a restaurant business. It was becoming a real estate empire. But as the company grew, the conflict with the McDonald brothers became impossible to ignore. Two different visions, two different ambitions, and only one of them would control the future of McDonald's. In the end, the brothers who created the idea would lose control of the empire they started, and the man who joined them later would become the face of McDonald's forever. But the biggest transformation was still ahead, because McDonald's was about to become more than a restaurant. It was about to become a global phenomenon. By the 1960s, McDonald's was no longer just a successful American restaurant. It was becoming something much bigger, a brand, a symbol, a business model that could travel anywhere. But transforming a small chain of restaurants into a global empire required one thing: a powerful identity. And Ray Kroc understood that McDonald's was not only competing with other restaurants, it was competing for a place in people's daily lives. The company began focusing heavily on marketing. The message was simple: McDonald's was a place for everyone, a place for families, a place for children, a place connected to happiness and memories. The restaurant was no longer selling only hamburgers and fries. It was selling an experience. One of the most important parts of this strategy was targeting younger generations. McDonald's introduced characters, colorful advertising, and eventually one of the most famous products in fast food history, the Happy Meal. Introduced in 1979, the Happy Meal transformed a simple meal into a collectible experience. Children were not just asking for food. They were asking for toys. They were asking for a visit to McDonald's. The company had created an emotional connection with customers from a very young age. As the decades passed, McDonald's expanded beyond the United States. New restaurants opened across Europe, Asia, and other parts of the world. The Golden Arches appeared in countries with completely different cultures and traditions, but McDonald's adapted. The company understood that global success required local changes. In India, the menu was adjusted to respect cultural preferences. In Japan, products were adapted to local tastes. In different countries, McDonald's became a combination of American branding and local culture. By the end of the 20th century, McDonald's had become one of the most recognizable brands on earth. But success at this scale came with a price. The bigger McDonald's became, the more attention it attracted. And not all of that attention was positive. Critics began questioning the impact of the fast food industry. They argued that companies like McDonald's contributed to unhealthy eating habits. Concerns grew around calories, processed food, and the long-term effects of frequent fast food consumption. The company became a symbol of a larger debate. Was fast food simply a convenient choice, or was it changing the way the world eats? Environmental concerns also increased. Critics raised questions about packaging waste, supply chains, and the environmental impact of producing massive amounts of food every day. McDonald's responded by making changes, including efforts to reduce waste and introduce more sustainable practices. But the debate continued, because when a company becomes as powerful as McDonald's, every decision becomes part of a global conversation. And there was another issue that would become central to the criticism of the company: the people who made the empire run, the workers. Behind every restaurant were thousands of employees preparing food, serving customers, and keeping the system moving. And questions about wages, working conditions, and opportunities inside the fast food industry became a major part of the conversation surrounding McDonald's. McDonald's had achieved something almost impossible. It had become a worldwide symbol. But the same size and influence that made the company successful also made it one of the most criticized brands in history. Because when you build an empire, the world starts looking closer at how it was built. For decades, McDonald's represented success. A small restaurant that became a global empire. A business model studied by entrepreneurs around the world. A brand recognized almost everywhere. But behind the success story was another side. A side filled with criticism, legal battles, and questions about the impact of the fast food giant. Because when a company becomes one of the most powerful brands on earth, it also becomes a target. One of the biggest criticisms directed at McDonald's was connected to health. As the fast food industry expanded, researchers and critics began raising concerns about the effects of highly processed food, large portions, and frequent consumption. McDonald's became a symbol of a much larger conversation. Was convenience changing the way people eat? The company responded by introducing changes over time. Menus evolved. Nutritional information became more available. Some products were adjusted. But the debate around fast food and health continued. Then came one of the most famous legal battles in McDonald's history. The case became known around the world as the McLibel case. In 1990, two activists in the United Kingdom, Helen Steele and David Morris, distributed leaflets criticizing McDonald's. The company decided to take legal action against them. What followed became one of the longest civil trials in British history. The case attracted worldwide attention because it raised questions about freedom of speech, corporate power, environmental issues, and working conditions. Although McDonald's won parts of the case, the publicity created a major challenge for the company. The lawsuit turned into a public relations battle, and many people began looking more closely at the practices of one of the world's biggest corporations. Another major issue surrounding McDonald's has been its workforce. With hundreds of thousands of employees around the world, the company became part of debates about wages, employee benefits, and opportunities in the fast food industry. Supporters argued that McDonald's provided millions of people with their first jobs and valuable work experience. Critics argued that many fast food workers faced difficult conditions and deserved better pay. The debate became part of a larger discussion about the future of work. But perhaps one of the most important criticisms of McDonald's was not about one specific product or one specific controversy. It was about influence. McDonald's had become more than a restaurant. It had changed how the world thought about food, speed, convenience, consistency. The idea that almost anything could be turned into a repeatable system. This was the true power of McDonald's. It created a blueprint that countless companies would follow. The company showed the world how branding, efficiency, and marketing could transform a simple product into a global experience. But it also showed the challenges that come with becoming too powerful. Because the bigger the empire became, the more people questioned the cost of that success. McDonald's was no longer just selling hamburgers. It was selling an idea that spread across the planet. But behind every empire is a story of decisions, sacrifices, and consequences. And the final question remains: how did a small restaurant become one of the most influential companies in human history? More than 80 years after the first McDonald's restaurant opened, the Golden Arches remain one of the most recognizable symbols on Earth. Millions of people interact with the brand every single day. New restaurants continue to open. New generations continue to grow up knowing the name. But in a world that changes constantly, one question remains: how has McDonald's managed to survive for so long? The answer is adaptation. McDonald's understood that staying successful required more than selling the same products forever. The company changed with the times. It introduced new menu items. It invested in technology. It improved ordering systems, and it embraced the digital world. Mobile apps, delivery services, and self-order kiosks transformed the way customers interacted with the brand. The restaurant that once depended on simple counters and cash registers became a technology-driven global business. But perhaps the biggest reason behind McDonald's survival is something much deeper: the power of familiarity. A traveler in a foreign country may not know the local language. They may not understand the culture, but they can recognize the golden arches. They know what to expect. They know the experience. That level of global recognition is something very few companies have ever achieved. McDonald's became a symbol of globalization. To some people, it represented innovation and opportunity. To others, it represented the spread of American culture and the dominance of large corporations. The same symbol could mean completely different things, depending on who was looking at it. Behind the restaurants, McDonald's also continued developing its business model. The company's success was not only based on selling food. It was built on franchises, real estate, branding, and an enormous supply chain. A system designed decades earlier by Kroc continued powering the company into the modern era. The machine kept running, but every empire faces new challenges. Today, McDonald's operates in a world very different from the one it dominated in the past. Consumers are more focused on health. Competition has increased. People demand more transparency, and younger generations often question traditional brands. The company must constantly answer a difficult question: how do you protect a legendary brand while changing with a changing world? The story of McDonald's is not simply a story about hamburgers. It is a story about ambition, about innovation, about marketing, and about the power of creating a system that can spread around the world. Two brothers created a simple idea. One businessman transformed it into an empire, and billions of customers turned it into a cultural phenomenon. But the story of McDonald's also reminds us of something important. Every successful empire has two sides: the side people celebrate and the side people question. Because behind every famous logo, there is always a story that is more complicated than it appears. McDonald's is not just a fast food company. It is one of the greatest business stories ever created. A story of success, a story of controversy, and a story that continues to be written every day.